Creole. We're Creole.
I had asked my mom later, I'm like, Mom, you grew up with your gram. You saw her all the time. You drove her to the grocery store. You wrapped Christmas presents there. You did sleepovers at her house, all that stuff. How is it you looked at this woman? I'm looking at the pictures of your gram. How is it you looked at this woman? You heard her say, I'm French, and you didn't have any questions in your mind? And not to throw shade on my mom, because why would you believe that your family would be lying to you?
Well, no, a lot of things I seen that didn't make any sense. And when I would ask my mother about it, she was like, wouldn't answer me, you know.
For having no information, there was also so much information floating around. It just depended on, could you talk to the right relative? Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel, where we talk about American identity and family stories. And I started this channel 2 years ago, kind of by accident. I was putting together a little docu-series for my family. I was trying to uncover my great-grandmother's actual ancestry from Louisiana. We all were told that we were French on that side, and I remember starting to dig into the census records and seeing her being listed as mulatto sometimes, and I was like, that doesn't seem right. And so it started this whole journey. And right after my grandmother passed away, I started putting this together. And so I wanted to bring you back with me to part of the documentary. We're going to start about the halfway point. I would love for you to see the whole thing. You can go to my channel and just type in full documentary. I also have them broken down into 4 separate episodes as well. I want to do some reaction to it now with some of the knowledge I have. I didn't know what the word white passing meant. I literally did not know what that phrase was when I started this journey. And so many people in the comments were saying, like, this story has happened in my family. This is not a new thing. This is such a Louisiana thing. It's such a Creole thing, all this stuff. And so I've been learning from all of you on this journey, even though I'm a historian by profession. This was a kind of history that I didn't learn in school. So I want to watch this with you and stop and talk and give you some maybe more information or things I wish I had done differently. So let's jump over to this. I'll make it full screen.
Know exactly what my grandmother would think about me.
That's my grandmother.
In earnest. She was always a little bit reticent to talk about this stuff, but I don't know if it was from a place of hiding things herself or if it was from a place of just not really knowing. I'm curious about the stories in the rest of my family. I know how I was raised, and I know like what my mom was told. What about
my mom and my grandmother and me?
Louisiana. I feel like all of these people could like kind of fill in the gaps of knowledge, because I think a lot of the knowledge that we have is wrong.
And Grammy Marianne said that her mom would never go in the sun. Like, just would not go in the sun.
My mother either. Never. She was very protective of going into the sun. So, they knew. So many things in the sea.
It's my Grammy and her brother.
My mother had an album with all her relations down south, and some of them were dark skinned. And I'd ask her about it, and she never would answer. Persons of color, they got hung in a tree. My sister Marion always insisted to.
So this is my Grammy right here, and he's talking about, so it's his sister Marion.
My mother was part African and part Indian.
I just want to pause and say also, my Uncle Danny here, he had never seen DNA test on himself until recently, but this was his understanding in his 80s. He's still alive in his 80s, that his mom, Lola, here on the screen, that she was part African and part Indian, Mexican. And he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong.
Perceived weakness people try to hide.
I don't think I'd hide that.
No, it's a downward perspective.
Oh.
Just fill in the blank with whatever you feel uncomfortable with.
So, Marion did that,
That's me and Grammy.
Footsteps, you know? In other words, if she got by with it all this time, then I will.
This didn't come out until my sister did like a family tree thing. I was at a golf outing with them. I was up in Albany, and we're having the lunch or whatever, the catered lunch. And I did my DNA. I'm 10% black. She goes, and she screams out in the place, "We're black!" I lost it.
So, okay, this is my mom's cousin. He's so funny. So basically, based on his test, that would make my grandmother, and this makes sense because she had an Irish dad, about 20% West African and like 20-ish percent Mexican. But what I mean by Mexican is like Hispanic. And so that would make her mom, his grandmother, about 40% West African, obviously, and 40 or so percent Hispanic, and then French as well. And obviously, these DNA tests aren't like, you don't want to hang your hat on them forever. But it was really crazy that for having no information, there was also so much information floating around. It just depended on, could you talk to the right relative?
Yeah, my mother,
This is my Grammy.
she never wanted to be associated that she was actually part black. What is it? Mulatto? No. I don't know.
We're like, we don't know.
Part black is mulatto. And something else. Creole? Or Creole. Is that a thing? That is something. She never be associated with she. She'd be part Creole, but she was part Creole. I won't be happy.
I just want to pause it here. If I was to do this documentary now, I wouldn't have said part Creole. Like, now I understand that it's not like a pie slice. Like, this is your culture, almost regardless of your ethnic breakdown. But her first language, my great grandmother's first language, was Creole. Like, this was, and so I wouldn't say like she's part Creole. I don't know. I don't know how she would have identified, but I literally had never heard my grandmother use that word in my entire life until this video. And what I had my mom do here was, we were doing Marco Polo during COVID. So Marco Polo was an app that I could send a video, and then my mom would watch it with my Grammy and send a video back in response. So I had some questions, and my mom sat and did that one night after a family dinner. Because they're in New York and I was in Nashville. And so I'm so grateful my mom did that. But I was so stunned by some of the stuff my Grammy shared. And she'll share more on here. But she was coming to the end of her life. And I think, I don't know, it just all started coming out. And this is my beautiful sister-in-law singing.
I won't be happy on the sea. I won't be happy on the sea.
So these are two cousins on that side.
Lee Hero. I grew up in Monroe.
So she was raised by Lola's sister, Azalea.
I wanted to go to Campti because somebody had passed away and I wanted to go with them. They were going. He said, no, he said, never go, don't you ever go there. I will not allow him to go there. Nothing was ever told why and all. And so growing up, in the back of my mind, I'm going to Campti. I want to find out why I can't go. And so years later, as I got older, I did. I went, just to see. I didn't see anything because I didn't know what I was looking for then.
This is my husband singing too. It was really emotional going to Louisiana for the first time here. It was super emotional. This is another cousin of ours.
I grew up in Campti. It was extremely hard. We were discriminated against. Back in the day, whenever I grew up, the schools in Campti, the old high school still stand in Campti, but it's been closed down for years. People of color, Black, Native American, Hispanic, any people of color were not allowed to go to school with the little white children up until the 60s.
So I just want to pause here. So my great-grandmother, Lola, she was born in Campti. They lived there until she was about 10 years old. And then they started kind of moving around Louisiana. They ended up in Monroe, which is where Chris and my cousin Audrey still are. But it was so meaningful to me to hear my cousin Frank talking because he's like my mom's age. And I'm sorry, I've always been really frustrated by the disconnect of like, we're not in Louisiana, our family left, didn't know what the connection was, but there's this backstory that was still playing out for decades, even after my great-grandmother left. And I don't know, I mean, when I hear about his experiences, it starts filling in those really uncomfortable blanks in the family story.
Then that changed. So until then, we're not allowed to go to school with little white children. We were taught mainly by the Catholic nuns. We didn't have school buses like they have this day and time. We had an old pickup truck with a homemade bed built on it. In the back of that old truck, the boys would, the girls get to ride in the front. Travel down Campti Bayou Road all the way to Black Lake. Well, that's a dirt road. In the summertime, when it's hot and dry, you get in the back of this truck with this old homemade bed on it. Running down that road, it forms a suction. Will pull that dust right back up in there where you're sitting. And when you get to school, your hair is white, brown or white. Before you do this right here, and go on a match visit. It was hard until they either tried to keep it hush-hush, some were lighter skinned, some so that the ones lighter skinned could get jobs, and also the parents didn't want to talk about where they came from. But it was, they just all got treated different. Like Audrey told me that Papa's told her never to carry Audrey when she was little, never carry her down the Daggers. I think it's probably from his experience down there. And I asked about him because so many of them migrated to Columbia, which is about 30 miles from here, to Louisiana, to Monroe Shores and Bastrop and Oak Grove.
They were mistreated. I think things were said. They weren't treated like Chris said as equals, in that aspect.
So I asked why do they think that my great-grandmother and husband left Louisiana after they started having kids in the 1930s?
It could have been the birth certificate, because I know some of my brothers had a problem.
These are our cousins too.
When the birth certificates were viewed on the race that had a black, and it bothered them very much so. And one of them went and had it changed. He had to go through some legal terms, but he had it changed and all. So that could have been it, because back then they were either other or black, because most of the midwives, when they go in, they wouldn't know the colors because some of the people were darker than others. Mulatto was a lot down here. It was a mixture of races together, because it was just like New Orleans is a melting pot.
This is what took to get his birth certificate was when.
So this is my mom's cousin Joy, who I love so much, and then my mom's uncle. That's my uncle Danny, and we're going to talk about his birth certificate. This is one of the things that got me flagged on YouTube. So wish me luck.
And they're like, yeah, and we need their birth certificates too. And I was like, do we have Dad's birth certificate? And we had to order it from the county. So I remember getting a copy of it, going like, oh my god, it's colored. That's not.
It said colored.
That's not even a thing.
No, we didn't know anything about our family, but the birth certificates say colored. It was like. I just want to say too, I mean, this is in New York. I actually was able to get a copy of this birth certificate they let me have. And what's crazy is that, so my Uncle Danny here, so his mom was Lola, and his mom's listed as colored, but his dad, you can see here, his dad's Irish. He's also listed as colored on the birth certificate. And I think that could be one of two things. One, he's Irish, so they were like, you're not white. The other is that I think more likely the husbands, were not in the room when the babies were being delivered and all of that. They weren't a part of that scene at all. So you look at the mom and you look at the baby, and that's that. Isn't she so beautiful?
My name is Robert Caldwell, and I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Apache community of Ebar.
So I just want to say I'm so thankful that Dr. Caldwell spoke with me, and when I talked to him during the series, it was really at the beginning of my journey, and he is part of the Choctaw Apache tribe of Ebar in Louisiana. And I have come to find out that a lot of my family is from the same lines as this tribe. So technically, I could enroll. I haven't decided to, that's a whole nother conversation, but I love being connected to people and learning and finding out more about our family. So I don't think I'm actually connected to him, but he's just amazing to talk to on this topic. And I wanted to hear a little bit about his experience on there. So I was asking, what was Louisiana like?
Being native at that time within that system was a low rank, kind of black-white binary of the U.S. South. And so to be darker meant to be closer to black or African. There are stories in my family where the brown paper bag test was applied. I've mostly heard that from Creole of color communities around Natchitoches, but it also happened in Savigny Parish, where even within the same family, some people had to sit in the balcony in the movie theaters, which is the colored section, and the others were allowed to go to the white section.
In the same family.
So there are a lot of stories in my family about fear of being placed as black in a sort of de facto category.
And again, it makes me think of the clip of just my Grammy and her sister and her mom, Lola, staying out of the sun. And it's just interesting because my grandmother was born in New York, and so was her sister Maggie, I believe. But they grew up in New York either way. And so I don't think they probably dealt with as much stuff up there. But there is this training of, this is how we behave. Like, we don't let ourselves get tan. We don't stay in the sun. We don't do those things. And it's enough that my grandmother's saying, like, as a little girl, I remember my mom not ever wanting to get more tan than she was. And again, like, we need the historical context. We need to know, where did your family live? What was it like where they were living? What was going on? It helps us to understand the decisions that they make, even if we don't agree with it now. It's not even my right to give my opinion on whether I agree or disagree. I need to understand, and understanding's been very hard.
Not having the rights that white people have. I heard my grandmother tell me, like, that when she was young, her family members would tell her, like, don't play in the sun too long.
There it is.
Play in the sun too long, you'll get too dark. You're already very dark. So that was very real.
This was a cousin that visited Natchitoches from California.
I mean, he grew up in California. He had black in him and Chinese and French and all the same kind of bunch of mixture. He said he was older than me, and he said he used to go to Natchitoches and sometimes spend with his grandfather down there. And he walked to the movie theater. Back then, because it was that way in London when I was a kid, black people had to sit upstairs above. It was a different entrance. Even still downtown, one of those theaters in Western, I tell my kids, like, this was the theater I went to for 50 cents when I was a kid. I said, you see this extra little doorway over here, there's a little skinny. Well, when you walked in the regular doors, when you bought your tickets, you still tell them about the little skinny door, it's the back side of that ticket gate. That's when the black man had to go up there. Well, that way in California, he said, sitting there watching the movie by himself. He was about 10, and he said he kept hearing people talk to him. And he looks black, but had green eyes, and his last name's Hongo, because that's the Chinese. And so he kept hearing, and he said, turn around, and kept looking, and he finally looked up there, and he said, black people sitting up there, and he said, looked around down where he was at and said, no way. He said he started getting nervous going, oh, I'm going to go to jail. And he said he slumped down in the seat. And he said, I was scared to death. And so he said when he left the theater and he started walking home, he said, I'm afraid the cops going to get me. And here comes a cop down the road. Just coincidence, but then a kid, and he actually cut through a yard and came out on another block. When he came on the block, here comes a car again. And they weren't hunting, but he said they might as well have grabbed me because I felt like I was done.
That fear.
She was just hiding it. She didn't want to be associated with
So this is my great grandma Lola. This is my grandmother Marianne. This is Aunt Maggie, and so these are sisters. And this is, well, and I'm not sure who this is. It's like from the 1960s. So, you know.
I guess, when you're in the South and part black, you ain't got it easy, dude.
Grandma White never alluded to anything.
This is my aunt.
About her ancestry at all, really, other than she wanted to make sure that I knew that it was French.
The whole thing about it is, and as I was
So this is my Uncle Danny. This is the one that said colored on his birth certificate. And you hear my Aunt Nancy, my mom's sister, talking and saying, like, this is the thing we heard. Even Grandma Lola saying, you're French. Just so you know, you guys are French. And sometimes I would ask my mom later, I'm like, Mom, you grew up with your gram. You saw her all the time. You drove her to the grocery store. You wrapped Christmas presents there. You did sleepovers at her house, all that stuff. How is it you looked at this woman? I'm looking at the pictures of your gram. How is it you looked at this woman? You heard her say, I'm French, got this heavy Creole accent, and you didn't have any questions in your mind. And not to throw shade on my mom, because it was just the accepted narrative, and that's what you're told. And why would you believe that your family would be lying to you?
Well, no, a lot of things I seen that didn't make any sense, and when I would ask my mother about it, she was like, wouldn't answer me, Picture of her and my father when they got married. And if you look at the wedding dress, you can see decorations of it from Indian heritage.
So what he's talking about here, I just added some footage. Let me pause it right here. So she has a concha belt on, which a concha belt, I've tried to research, well, why would she have this in Louisiana? And the best that I can come up with is that they do have indigenous ties through Texas to Mexico and possibly even New Mexico, which I'm trying to figure out. My family made tamales. They had the matata y mano for grinding the corn, which I think we get to in this too. But she has this concha belt on her wedding day, and I don't know where it went. I don't know whose it was. I don't know what happened. They're in Louisiana, which I already knew, but you can tell also just like the shape of the roof and stuff. And so it was really interesting to hear my Uncle Danny talking about it and noticing that. And he asked her about it. This is what happened.
You can see decorations of it from Indian heritage, And when you look at the way the belt is around her waist, it's different things like that, And when I try to ask her questions and things like that, she used to always say, I'm French, Never saying that she was of any color because they were afraid. They were afraid, even coming in, up into New York. Mother was still afraid.
So, why would she be afraid? My cousin Frank is about to tell a story, and it's a pretty crazy story. It happened in Campti, Louisiana. It happened when he was 40, ish, I think, and she would have been just a little kid. They were living in Campti, very small little town, rural town outside Natchitoches, Louisiana. And so, as I've come to do paperwork and things like that, I say these are cousins. They're like second cousins or something. And this is what happened while they were living there.
A particular guy, his name was Ozan Desider. There's a lot of Desiders. I went to school with some Desiders. Probably this guy was his great-grandfather or something of that nature. Ozan Desider tried to purchase his property the government sent agents down and visited there. Were not selling his property. Probably they just didn't offer him very much for it. Even whatever they offered for it, he did not want to sell. So in return, they came back later on at a different time at night time. That time, they used torches. They didn't have flashlights and electricity. They called him out, come out on his front porch, and they said, come help us with the guy down the road they needed help with. So he believed what they were telling him. He said, hang on, let me light my torch. So went out, lit his torch by the fireplace, and came back out on the front porch. The torch put him as a target in the dark. So they shot him down on his front porch and killed him mainly because he would not sell his land. Well, they feared that same thing would happen to them. If they didn't sell their land, that they would be killed. So they denied being Native American so that they could stay there. They went into hiding in plain sight.
You provide for me from sea to... She was 5 years old. So what happened was he's murdered there in Campti. My great-grandmother's 5. And then the next census, we check, and they've moved. They fled Campti. They moved to Bastrop and Monroe. So like my cousin Chris was saying, a lot of families felt the pressure. A lot of families of color felt the pressure during this time and started leaving. And so I did always wonder, was this like one of the things that made them say, we gotta get out of here? I'm sure there were plenty more. And that's my great-grandmother right there in New York at my Grammys. So I will be going to Louisiana and talking some more with other family. And I'm really excited to bring that to you guys. So let me know what you think about this. If you haven't seen the full series, I'd love for you to watch it. Let me know in the comments. Have you seen it? Are you rewatching it with me? Let me know what your thoughts are. And if you'd love to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to watch and share the stories with folks who need them, because the world can be really hard. And I think being honest and sharing stories is a way of lighting a little candle in our corner of the world. Another thing you can do, if you go to NewYorkToNashville.com, I have a bunch of Be a Good Ancestor merch, and that helps a lot too. But thank you for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you so much. We'll talk soon. The last 2 years, I've been telling the stories that often get ignored. But lately, I've been facing an uphill battle behind the scenes of each video. My videos are getting flagged by YouTube when all I'm doing is sharing real history. If these stories have ever resonated with you or given you a new perspective, grab some Be a Good Ancestor merch and help me keep this channel going. Check out NYTonashville.com.